Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, new standards for when police can use deadly force in California.
392 is now law in the state of California.
It's a victory in Sacramento for a San Diego Assemblywoman who pushed for the change. Plus, a San Diego police officer was accused of sexually assaulting a woman in his custody. Why there were no criminal charges even though the city paid a settlement.
Commuting in the North County just got a lot easier. If you take the coaster, you need to know about the Carlsbad Connector. That's coming up.
And a campus crackdown on electric scooters and bikes. The change is coming to a local university just days before the new school year. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Monday, August 19th. I'm Ebony Monet. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, we're seeing how the use of force by police is making headlines at the local, state, and national level. In New York, the NYPD has fired an officer involved in the chokehold death of Eric Garner. Locally, the district attorney's office has new analysis of 25 years of officer-involved shootings. But first, KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar on the use of force law from San Diego Assemblywoman Shirley Weber.
Governor Gavin Newsom signed Assembly Bill 392 into law today. The law's supporters hope it will lead to a drop in the number of police shootings in California.
It's one thing to sign a piece of paper, pass legislation. It's another to change hearts and minds, to change culture, to change the way people conduct themselves, to hold themselves to a higher standard. That's the work that is in front of us.
The law, authored by Democratic Assemblywoman Shirley Weber of San Diego, will allow police to use lethal force only when there is an imminent threat of death or serious injury to officers or bystanders. Newsom celebrated the new law with the families of some of the 172 people who were killed by police in California in 2017.
I've never met individuals more passionate and more concerned than the families who've lost individuals in this whole process. It has been an eye-opener for me because I understood somewhat their pain, but I never knew how deep and how permanent that pain was because they lacked justice.
The new law means law enforcement officers could face homicide charges if an investigation finds they acted with criminal negligence. San Diego District Attorney Summer Stephan says she thinks the new law, in addition to required de-escalation training requirements, will help officers think about a range of options they can use in a crisis situation.
The point isn't just what the law provides, it's how can we as a community do better? How can we have the most professional response to people in crisis and to public safety?
The new law will go into effect January 1st, 2020. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
In the San Diego District Attorney's Office is calling for more mental health training for officers. This after an in-depth report from that office spanning 25 years. KPBS reporter Claire Tregesser says advocates hope there's real change.
The district attorney's report found that since 1993, 40% of the shootings involved a white officer and a non-white suspect. Black people make up just 5% of San Diego County's population, yet 19% of the people shot by police were black. This disparity was not factored into the report, which District Attorney Summer Stephan acknowledged in an interview Monday with KPBS.
But what is really interesting about having the data speak for itself is you see that non-white officers and white officers shot at a higher rate non-white people. So it's hard to know exactly what that statistic means and how it relates to other information that might be out there.
But to Bishop Cornelius Bowser, the information clearly shows what police need to do.
So they have to learn how to de-escalate and take their time before they go into a crime scene or go into when they call to a scene.
And Darwin Fishman, a professor at San Diego State, says he hopes the report leads to action.
Most all the changes, the district attorney and the police, unfortunately, we've had to drag them screaming and kicking. And I think that they will probably be happy with just releasing this, and that if we want any substantial changes with practices, that we'll have to really push harder.
Almost 65% of police shootings happened less than 5 minutes after officers arrived on the scene. District Attorney Stephan says the report strongly shows the need for more police training on working with people on drugs or with mental health issues.
At the end of this month, the crisis de-escalation training is being rolled out and the community input is being obtained.
Claire Trageser, KPBS News.
We'll have more from Claire Trageser on the issue of police accountability later in this newscast. It involves the case of a San Diego police officer accused of sexually assaulting a woman in his custody. The city paid a settlement. Coming up later, how newly released documents raise questions about why the officer was not charged with the crime. The New York police officer involved in the choking death of Eric Garner is out of a job. Camila Burnell reports on today's decision by NYPD about to fire him and why Garner's family says more needs to be done.
NYPD Commissioner James O'Neill announcing a long-awaited final decision.
It is clear that Daniel Pantaleo can no longer effectively serve as a New York City police officer.
Pantaleo was found guilty in a disciplinary trial earlier this month of using a chokehold on Eric Garner. The administrative judge recommending Pantaleo be fired and the police commissioner agreeing.
This was not an easy decision. It's not something that I could make over a few hours. You know, I've been thinking about this since the day I was sworn in as police commissioner.
But Pantaleo's defense attorney and the police union continue to say the chokehold did not cause Garner's death and add that firing him has a negative impact on the entire police force.
The leadership has abandoned ship and left our police officers on the street alone.
The termination comes more than 5 years after police tried to arrest the 43-year-old father of 6 who was allegedly selling loose cigarettes illegally, and 5 years too late, according to the family.
We will be going for the congressional hearings. We will be trying to reopen the case. We will be going after the rest of the officers involved because it's not over.
Their goal is to make it illegal for officers to use a chokehold in New York and in the U.S.
The fight is not over. We will continue to fight.
Camila Burnell, KPBS News.
You can find more coverage on all of this police use of force stories at kpbs.org. That includes our midday edition interview with San Diego County District Attorney Summer Stephan. A major move today by Planned Parenthood. It's pulling out of the federal family planning program. A federal court is allowing the Trump administration to ban participants from referring abortions as a legal challenge plays out. Planned Parenthood says it will try to make up for the loss of federal money on its own. It admits that many low-income women could go without care. A local community is mourning the loss of a Chaldean man who died shortly after being deported to Iraq. His family says it was because he lacked access to insulin there. Now, from KPBS reporter Max Ripplin-Nadler.
Jimmy Al-Daoud was one of the first Chaldeans, a group of Iraqi Christians, to be deported to Iraq following a 2017 agreement between Iraq and the United States. For decades prior to that, the U.S. had deemed Iraq too dangerous to accept deportations. El Cajon is the center of the second largest population of Chaldeans in the United States, behind Detroit. Many of them have yet to become citizens, leaving them vulnerable to possible deportation as a result of low-level criminal convictions or other reasons. 25-year-old Marvin Micah is from El Cajon, and he was born in the U.S. to Chaldean parents who left Iraq in the 1980s. He says the reason a lot of Chaldeans haven't become citizens is because they don't know how to get help to navigate the difficult process.
It's understanding when to apply and why they should apply. So, because there's not people knocking on doors saying, hey, what's your residency status? Should you be applying for citizenship? It's knowing when to do it and where to go. So I think that's the real barrier they're seeing.
Since 2017, Immigration and Customs Enforcement has identified a list of more than 1,400 Iraqis nationwide who are eligible for removal to Iraq. Micah places the blame for Al-Daoud's death on this country's broken immigration system.
That happening today is really a failure of our current immigration system, and kind of a stain on the individuals in the federal government anyways having those immigration debates today.
He says Chaldeans looking to become citizens can reach out to organizations like the Alliance for African Assistance or the Chaldean Catholic Church. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
A bipartisan bill in the House would provide 2 years of relief from deportation for Iraqi nationals with the final order of removal. It is yet to come to a vote. A federal judge says a jury can decide whether to hold PG&E responsible for one of the most destructive fires in state history. In 2017, the Tubbs fire killed 22 people and destroyed thousands of homes in the Santa Rosa area. CAL FIRE says PG&E equipment did not cause the fire. Today's ruling caused PG&E's stock to fall by about 25%. It was another volatile day for stocks. The Dow soared 250 points, making up some of the value lost last week. As Whitney Wild reports, investors are optimistic about a potential trade deal with China.
After a week of Wall Street whiplash, stocks surged Monday, a sign investors think the trade war with China may soon end. Sunday, the president tweeted, "We are doing very well with China and talking." The trade war has been one factor that economists worry could soon cause a recession. Trump and administration officials, however, insist that's unlikely.
I don't see a recession. I sure don't see a recession.
A survey released Monday shows many economists disagree. Nearly 3/4 of those surveyed think the U.S. will enter a recession in 2021 or sooner. Consumer spending has propelled the economic expansion now in its 11th year, but experts fear if the spending flow dries up, a recession may follow. Around the world, the outlook is troubling. The International Monetary Fund cut its global growth forecast in April. Germany's central bank warned the European powerhouse is teetering on the brink of recession. The Brexit strategy remains opaque. Here at home, economists don't expect a trade deal with China before 2020. U.S. farmers worry they can't win a waiting game.
Every couple of years we have elections, and it drives a lot of our policy. China doesn't have that. They take a long-term view, and they don't really care on the short-term stuff.
In Washington, Whitney Wild, KPBS News.
It's a big scare for kayakers in Alaska. Video shows the collapse of a glacier and a wall of water heading towards them.
All right, so y'all just saw that. We survived, but that was insane. We are soaking wet. Yeah, we are soaking wet, and we were obviously way too close. We knew that going into this. Our wives told us not to get close, but that was probably the coolest thing that I've ever done in my life.
Andrew Hopper and a friend were kayaking near Anchorage, near an area called Spencer Glacier. After surviving the wave, they paddled to a calmer area to record their reaction. Alaska has seen a rise in melting glaciers due to higher temperatures this summer. Here in San Diego, warm and clear weather will continue this week. Aaron Calandra has details in tonight's forecast.
Well, we are seeing a pretty dry pattern right now. Here is the satellite and radar. Nothing going on. It is going to remain dry and sunny, and that's how it looks for really across much of California and also the deserts. We're not seeing much of a monsoon season right now. That moisture is limited, so it's been awfully dry in the deserts as well. Taking a look at the temperature for tonight across the metro area. We expect to see a quiet night ahead with a couple of clouds around building, of course, as the night goes on. And then by midday tomorrow, it's going to be nice and sunny. A temperature of 66 degrees for the low. Oceanside at 63 and El Cajon 63 as well. A couple of clouds around. Borrego Springs at 78 degrees for the low. It's going to be hot and dry tomorrow, kind of like how it has been the last couple of days. Cooler along the coast, of course. With that influence off of the Pacific, we'll see some of those clouds again in the morning, but by the afternoon, we'll have sunshine in San Diego. 76 for the high, that's right around average. Oceanside at 77 and Ramona, 93 degrees. Borrego Springs still cooking in the triple digits, and in the mountains, Mid-80s, sunshine with perhaps a cloud or two. Midweek, expect to see a dry pattern. We have a big ridge here in the jet stream, so we have that nice warm flow coming up out of the south. Nothing organized to give us any kind of rain, so it's going to look pretty nice on the coast for the next several days. Mostly sunny with a few clouds decorating the sky. Our highs will be in those mid to upper 70s each day. Inland, we reach 91 Wednesday, but that's going to be the warmest day of the week. After that, we're only in those mid to upper 80s, and it's going to be sunny and pleasant. Across the deserts, we'll be in the triple digits. The warmest day of the week again Wednesday, but then cooling down to 104 by Saturday. And in the mountains, we'll be in those mid-80s, dipping down to 79 on Friday. That's going to be a beautiful day in the mountains, and it's going to be nice and sunny. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Back to you.
Newly released records are giving us far more specific details about a San Diego police officer's alleged sexual assault of a woman in 2013. The records are from an internal police investigation, and they raise questions as to why the officer was never charged. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregesser has been reading through the documents and joins us now. Claire, can you start off by giving us more background about this alleged assault?
In 2013, Officer Donald Moncrief was called to the Otay Mesa port of entry to pick up a woman who was trying to drive a stolen car into Mexico, and he was supposed to transport her to prison in his police car. The woman, who was not named in the documents, then later alleged that Moncrief sexually assaulted her. She said that he asked her to masturbate while he masturbated, and that he asked her for sex, and that he touched her breasts before dropping her off at prison.
And we now have even more details about what allegedly happened. What do they tell us?
Well, the documents really show that there was a lot of evidence that supports what the woman says. The investigators who wrote the report called Moncrief's behavior, quote, highly suspect. Here's a quote from that report.
Officer Moncrief's account of what occurred is highly suspect, and even if it were to be believed, demonstrates a complete lack of common sense and judgment.
And investigators had a harsh reaction to the officer's account of what happened, calling it highly suspect. Why so?
Well, for several reasons. The woman was a known Mexican gang member, and bullets were found in her car, but Moncrief never searched her and took her handcuffs off at some point during the 25-mile drive to Las Colinas detention facility in Santee. Here's another quote he told investigators.
To be honest with you, I don't search females. I don't.
Moncrief also said he drove a direct route and did not stop on the way to prison, but tracking of his squad car showed he stopped multiple times during the trip. Moncrief claimed that in the days and weeks that followed, he did not call the woman at all, but telephone records show that he called and texted the woman 26 times.
So those are alarming contradictions, but you combed through these documents. What stood out to you?
Well, the biggest thing that stood out was how appalled the investigators seemed to be with Moncrief's claims. Here's one thing that they said.
Officer Moncrief's inept, lackadaisical attitude towards officer safety is deplorable.
They also seemed to be completely incredulous of his story.
Officer Moncrief had no reasonable explanation for why he would have driven a masturbating female prisoner to a remote location to re-handcuff her.
Where is he now? He was allowed to resign. Where did he end up?
Right. So basically nothing happened to him. He resigned during the investigation before the administrative review took place, so he didn't have to go through that review. And police sex crime investigators forwarded the case to the district attorney, but he was never charged. And so I asked Dan Gillian, a lawyer who later represented the woman in a civil lawsuit against the city, about this, and here's what he said.
The DA is not going to file against a police officer unless she has to. And the only way she's ever going to be forced to do it is if the media pay attention to it.
So, Claire, since he was allowed to resign without fully being reviewed, we've seen in the past that sometimes officers will simply just apply for another position in a different district. Is there anything in place to prevent that from happening in this case? What's next?
It means that future employers may never know that anything bad even happened.
I talked to a San Diego police spokesman, and he told me if someone resigns to avoid an administrative review and then applies to work at another law enforcement agency, that future employer may not know anything had happened. The only way they might find out would be if during a background check, the supervisor or peer told the employer there was supposed to be a review.
So the way that you were able to obtain this information was thanks to a recent law change here in California. Otherwise, this internal investigation may not have been privy to the public or you as a journalist. So tell us more about that law change.
Right. Previously, these things would happen and the public would never really know about it. But now this new state law, which went into effect in January, says that police have to release internal investigations when they shoot someone in the line of duty or cause great bodily injury, and when an officer is found to have committed a sexual assault or lied during the course of an investigation.
So it sounds like we can look forward to even more reports like this from you.
That's right.
KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregesser, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm William Brangham. Tonight on the NewsHour, power in numbers. What's next after more than 1 million demonstrators march through Hong Kong? Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Tonight, we get a look at the new stadium plan for SDSU. These are the renderings. They were released during a football fan event over the weekend. It's part of the SDSU West development approved by voters last year. The stadium would seat 35,000 people. SDSU still needs to buy the land from the city and finish environmental reviews. It plans to open the new stadium in 2022. Students begin classes next week at SDSU. When they do, it will be a no scooter zone. Today, the university announced new restrictions. People will be allowed to ride electric scooters and bikes to campus, but they will automatically slow down on campus grounds. Those who bring scooters into restricted areas could be fined. The university says the changes are due to safety concerns. MTS is changing its pricing for bus and trolley tickets. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says riders will see an increase or decrease depending on what they buy.
MTS hasn't had a fare increase in nearly 10 years, and the agency says over that time, operating costs have gone up by almost 25%. Here's a look at some of the fare changes. A one-way bus ride will go up by $0.25 to $2.50. Trolley fares will stay the same. Day passes will also go up from $5 to $6, and MTS is creating a new half-price day pass for youth, seniors, and people with disabilities. The cost of a standard monthly pass is staying at $72, but the discounted version is going up from $18 to $23. MTS spokesman Rob Shoup says the agency has to make tough decisions when it faces a budget deficit.
I mean, we only have two choices, really. One is to either raise fares or to reduce service. In all of the polling that we've done with our riders, they would much prefer a small increase in fares than for us to reduce service.
Another change MTS is making, no more free transfers between trolley lines. The vast majority of cities offer free or discounted transfers on their transit systems. Colin Parent of the nonprofit Circulate San Diego says this change is a step backward for San Diego.
Not only is it unfair, but it's also going to deter more people who might choose to ride transit, especially occasional riders.
Public transit is a key ingredient in San Diego's efforts to combat climate change. Ridership has been on the decline for the past few years, but officials say that trend appears to be bottoming out. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Commuters to and from Carlsbad that use the coaster train now have a quick and easy way to bridge the gap between the Poinsettia station and the rest of the city. KPBS reporter John Carroll shows us how the new Carlsbad Connector works.
The coaster commuter train began service between Oceanside and San Diego in 1995. But like any rail or bus mass transit system, there's been the challenge of what's called first mile, last mile, how to get from the station to your home or destination, and vice versa.
We want folks to be able to get from the coaster to their place of work, to leisure spots within our cities, without having to use their car.
With the cutting of a blue ribbon, the 5 shuttle buses making up the Connector fleet were ready for the coaster train, carrying their first riders. Calling a Carlsbad Connector is easy. If you know how to use Uber or Lyft, you already know how to do it. It's all app-based.
Just makes it that much easier to get here without having to drive.
Kirk Leopoldo commutes to Carlsbad from downtown San Diego every day.
Yes.
He says he's happy with the new conductor service.
Usually I would walk the last mile, about 25-minute walk, or grab an Uber from here to the office. For me, it's just not be in the car for an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon.
One of the things that our local businesses really desire is for their folks to be able to move in from different cities where they live and be able to really quickly connect to the workplaces rather than getting stuck in traffic.
Coaster riders who have monthly or daily passes can ride the Connector for free, or it'll cost you $250 for a one-way trip. The service represents a $650,000 investment split between the city of Carlsbad, the North County Transit District, and Sandag. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, an interview with jazz star Herbie Hancock. He'll tell us about bringing his summer tour to San Diego. And on Midday Edition, local community colleges are back in session this week. We'll talk to the district chancellor about the cost of higher education. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.